Welcome back to another one. Welcome back to Bolo Up. This is a book called The Billionaire Cinderella Contract, written by Michelle Smart. And we have started reading this. I got permission from Michelle to go ahead and read this online. I'm not making anything from it, but I am enjoying reading it and sharing it with the world. And so I thank you so much for tuning in and taking this time to listen and share and like and subscribe and enjoy this small short story. Well, it's not really that short, but it is getting pretty good. So I'm on 41, and I'm going to go ahead and just continue reading, and we'll see where my phone dies. So I hope you're having a fabulous night. I am. I was going to take a picture of there's the moon. It's a very small dot and a bird. And I just found a spot where I can sit down. The sun is shining and setting. And I just found me a spot on the curb, and I just decided I wanted to read. Mountains are over there. I just got off work, and I'm waiting till the sun goes down so I can stop fasting, because I'm fasting until the 20th of next month. So, yeah, and it's been quite an adventure so far. Today's my second day. And yeah, I'm starting to get hungry. But it's also for my spiritual practice as well. So I don't know why I came out with that or why I'm sharing that with you, but I just did. Okay, so moving along, let's go ahead and get into this. The Billionaire Cinderella Contract by Michelle Smart, and read by Bolo Up, me, yours truly. Damien's smile vanished as he watched Mia disappear into the run-down building she called home. He rapped on the persian to let his driver know they could go, then rested back on the seat and closed his eyes. The beats of his heart thudded with such strength he felt the echoes through his heated skin. He could count on one hand the number of serious mistakes he's made in his life. Convincing his father to give the untested Emiliano a senior role in the business had always been the top one, a mistake that had cost Damien and his father $500 million of their private wealth. The weight in his stomach told him Mia Caldwell could easily top that. He'd not even known her a day, but he never met anyone outside his immediate family who pushed his buttons as easily as she did. For the sum he was paying her, he assumed she would be differential to him. In Damien's world, people molded themselves to fit his expectations. While Mia had played her part in the restaurant beautifully, she clearly had no intention of molding herself to fit his expectations as when they were alone. Wow. She wanted him to know the contempt she held in him. She gazed at him throughout their meal with a soft, dewy expression. He demanded, but her eyes had told their own story. She'd made no effort to hide her loathing. Like the character he watched her play in the evening before, she had a wistfulness about her. This alone would not be an issue, not so long as she played the role he was paying her for when he needed her to. The biggest problem, he was forced to admit grimly, was his undeniable attraction to her. This was not something he factored in when desperation had forced him to go down the route of paying an actress to help him. And what the hell had compelled his tongue to reveal that it was his brother he was up against? His answer to her question had come from nowhere. It had been indoctrinated in Damien from birth that emotions were for the bedroom, not the boardroom. Never mix business with pleasure on a sensual level. And all for very good reasons. Namely, the man who allowed his head to be turned took his eyes off the ball. That he'd always been certain had been the reason behind Emiliano's disastrous time working for the business. Rumors have thrown... I knew I was going to mess that one up. Let me try that again. Rumors had flown throughout the Delgado group that he had been having an affair with one of the staff. Damien had never found proof of this, but considering Emiliano's lust for life and lust for beautiful women, he believed it. True or not, something had turned Emilio's head far enough away from his job in the hand that his eyes had lost sight of the ball altogether. In all his 36 years, Damien had never had a problem separating the boardroom from the bedroom. Like his father, he'd never taken his eyes off the ball. Yet now, at the time he most needed to keep his famed focus, when his entire fortune and place in the world were at stake, he kept finding himself staring at the woman he was relying on and forcing himself not to strip her naked with his eyes. Every word exchanged between them came with the charge that raced through his veins and an uncomfortable heat that stirred in his loins. Even now, when the space she sat in the back of the car had been empty for 20 minutes, he could still feel the charge rippling through him. How he wished he could have agreed Mia's request to terminate their agreement. He didn't know if her request had been some kind of game to force more money out of him. He put her straight before she could ask. Terminating the agreement was out of the question. It really was too late to turn back. The wheels really had been set in motion. They'd been seen together. The world was vast, but rumor could shrink it to the size of a snowball. If they weren't already aware, whispers would soon reach his family that he'd taken a new lover. Having always been fussy about women he chose to bed, suspicions would be raised if he dumped Mia and immediately hooked up with another actress. For all the dangers he could see himself having to navigate in the coming weeks, he was stuck with her. The theater audience and the next night was particularly an enthusiastic one, who laughed uproariously and applauded with gusto. This was the kind of audience Mia, like all stage performers, adored. It made this curtain call at the end of the performance a joy. And made her cheeks hurt from smiling so widely and for so long. That night, though, she needed all her acting skills to fake her smiles during the curtain call. Right at the end of the song, I could have danced all night. She suddenly spotted the hulking figure sitting in the far right of the third row. Her heart clattered, and the nightgown she'd been twirling around the stage dropped out of her hands. How she recovered without any of the audience noticing anything amiss, she had no idea. As she bowed, she made sure to keep her gaze far from the right, just as she'd done the rest of the performance. But, just as had happened throughout the evening, Damien's stare burned straight through her. She couldn't get off the stage fast enough. The chatter amongst the female cast members she shared the dressing room with was a distant buzz in her head. She could only smile and nod at any conversations directed at her, trying hard to control the tremors in her hand as she removed her stage makeup. A loud rap on the door made her heart clatter all over again. There was not a single doubt in her mind as to who was knocking. She frantically smoothed the loose striped top she changed into over her skinny black trousers with Nicole, who played Mrs. Higgins, opened the door, still continuing I'm so sorry. Still continuing her conversation with the others, her words came to an abrupt halt. Well, Nicole said after letting out a very low yet obvious whistle. What can we do for you? Mia squeezed her eyes shut as Damien's deep, distant voice rang through the sudden silence. I'm here for Mia. I'm sorry I had to do that. I don't know where that came from. Excuse me. Behind her, she heard someone, probably Joe, muttering, Lucky Mia. Clutching her overnight bag to her chest, Mia fixed a smile to her face and spun around. Damien stood at the threshold, dressed down in a navy polo shirt and black jeans, hair impeccably groomed, dark eyes fixed on her. She knew perfectly well what he expected of her. Damien, she cried, hurrying over to stand before him. You made it! A smile he gave could have powered the Eiffel Tower, but before she could appreciate its full effect, a wave of his cologne hit her as he hooked a giant arm around her waist, pulling her against him, and before she could blink, let alone think, covered her mouth with a kiss that managed to be both fleeting yet hungry. I wouldn't have missed it for the world, he murmured. Mi vida, I couldn't keep my eyes off of you. On stage. Dumbstruck at the unexpected intimacy and the tingling rush of heat it sent careering through her lips and straight into her bloodstream, Mia could only stare into the dark eyes and pray her legs didn't give way beneath her. Noting the bright stain of color flush over Mia's cheeks, Damien conceded that she really was a superlative actress. Aware, too, of the open-mouthed shock on the other actresses' faces, he released his hold around her waist and took her hand. I hope you ladies will not be offended if I take Mia from you now. This is my last night in the UK, so we want to make the most of our time we have left together. And the room, all eyes and jaws have dropped to the floor. Page 46. Minutes later, hands still clasped, they left the building through the stage exit and into his waiting car. The moment his driver shut the door, Mia snatched her hand away and edged as far away from him as she could before glaring at him with enough venom to poison the whole suburban town they were in. What the hell are you playing at? She demanded. I told you I would collect you after the performance. You said your driver would collect me. You said nothing without attending it. Did you find my presence a distraction? Of course not. I didn't even notice you in the audience. Of course you didn't, Pinocchio. He seen the nightgown drop from her hands in the moment her eyes had fallen onto him. Everyone had seen it. The only mishap in the otherwise spellbinding performance. But she covered it so well that no one would have realized. Only he'd known it for what it was, and it made all his sinews tighten to witness the effect he had on her. Her glare deepened. And what the hell were you playing at, kissing me like that? How dare you? You do not kiss me. Not ever. He contemplated her coolly. We were in public. I made it very clear that I expected you to show me affection in public. It's what I'm paying you for. And I made it very clear that I'm not an escort. Do you refuse to kiss on stage if the role calls for it? Her pretty full lips clamped together, fury firing from the bright blue eyes. He held the gaze and shook his head despairingly. I thought not. Get used to the idea of us kissing in public, mi vida. When we are with my family, you will be glued to my side, if not to my mouth. Lay one finger on me in private, and I swear to God, her voice trailed off as whatever threat she'd been about to utter vanished into the ether. "Get over yourself," he drawled. The kiss meant nothing. If she could only see the tingling on his lips. Still, from that one fleeting brush of their mouths, she would know it was a lie. She would know it for the lie it was. Okay, it sounded better the second time. So, "Get over yourself," he drawled. The kiss meant nothing. If she could only see the tingling on his lips, still there from one fleeting brush of their mouths, she would know it for the lie it was. Mercifully, his iron control hadn't let him down, and he'd stopped the tingles spreading anywhere more intimate. As it is, we are stuck together for the next few weeks, so grow up and get over it. Damn it, but this was the last thing he needed. He'd watch her perform on stage for the second night in a row and been as captivated as the first time. More so. He'd been unable to tear his eyes from her, unable to stop his mind running riot as he mentally undressed her, unable to stop his heart throbbing in response to her melodious singing. He could not afford to have his mind distracted. When they were at the villa, he needed to keep his wits about him and focus on finding the documents.